Hello, welcome back to, episode 9 of Untested Arcana, the show where I take popular characters in media and turn them into tabletop RPG content. For now, that just means subclasses for 5th edition, but in the future, we're going to branch out to, all sorts of other stuff. As the name suggests, all this is untested. This is not a show about making perfect, ready-to-publish material. This is about the kinds of decisions that go into making that first draft. So this week has kind of been interesting. I was traveling for work. I didn't really have time to work on this at all until I got back on Friday. So I'm pretty behind. There's a chance this video is being posted a little late. Not that anyone exactly waits for my uploads. But this is perhaps going to be the most untested subclass I've done so far. The thing that is the least likely to be balanced and ready to use at the table. And it'll be obvious why when we get into it. But let me tell you the strange story of how I came to make this subclass. I was watching something, frankly I don't recall what it was, and it featured the very common trope of blade beams. And I realized that weirdly for something that is such a basic piece of swordplay fantasy, it's not particularly well represented in 5th edition. Now, you might stop and go, what are you talking about? There's sword burst, there's any number of ranged attacks, there's all those ranger spells that conjure barrages. You could make the argument that a hexblade using Eldritch Blast could be doing blade beams. But that's not what I want. I don't want spells that I have to reflavor as blade beams. I want blade beams. I want to be so good at sword that sword become laser. And also, you know what? I want to cut a fireball in half. Again, okay, well, maybe Blade Singer weapon focus counterspell is cutting a fireball in half, and honestly, fuck you, no. I want to just cut a fireball in half rules as written. Now, when I was thinking about the Blade Beam thing, I was like, well, a lot of characters use this. The conceit of this show is that I'm basing it on a fictional character, and I have a lot of choices here. But the reason I chose, at least for the thumbnail, characters from Sword Art Online is that show does something very specific that I like, which is it shows these two main characters, Kirito and Asuna, both having basically the same power set. Very good at sword, sometimes make laser. But he uses a large slashing weapon, and she uses a piercing weapon. And because of that, their movesets are different. She has a sort of linear charge. He has a kind of arc-based blade beam. And you could imagine, hypothetically, a character in this universe using a maul and having bludgeoning-based blade beam stuff. And that's what I want. I don't want to make a specific, longsword subclass. I want to make something where anyone who uses a melee weapon can produce magical effects with it. And so I set out to make this kind of generalized magic weapon user subclass. Now, like I said, I didn't want to be a spellcaster who uses weapons. I'm not trying to make a swords bard or a blade singer or a hexblade. I want this to go the other direction. I want to make a martial class that gets magic-like abilities. And I think there's sort of two classes that would work best here. Monk could work, but fighter is the better choice here. It doesn't come preloaded with a bunch of mystical stuff like Monk does. And honestly, I think that the 4 attacks per action plus action surge is just a lot better for this fantasy of, like I said, so good at sword. And because I knew that what we're trying to reproduce is, I guess, novel for D&D, but not really. It's really built out of a lot of things that you can do as various character types. I kind of scraped through all of the classes and grabbed the features that I wanted and just kind of jammed them into the fighter subclass structure. I went and stole the cantrip plus skill from Arcane Archer. I think that's a really interesting, pretty low impact way of giving this subclass more of a fun identity. I then grabbed sort of the concept of key points and merged that with the Battlemaster maneuvers from Battlemaster. Then for the next feature, I took the magical weapons from Kensei Monk because I think that makes perfect sense. At 10th level, back to Battlemaster, where we just improve our techniques. At 15th, I did what both Battlemaster and Arcane Archer do, which is let you regenerate power when you're at 0. And then at 18, I took signature spells from Wizard and just adapted it to these maneuvers. Now you have signature maneuvers that you can do for free. This is also very similar to Swords Bard at high level. And so yeah, this subclass is basically built out of existing, well-established, well-balanced things, and I've just kind of rephrased them and retuned them to all work together. So let me read the description that I wrote for this subclass, which I have called the Weaveknight. To earn the title of Weaveknight, a fighter must learn to control the magical energy of the weave itself, though not through the casting of spells. Instead, they direct their magic into and through their weapons, granting them martial skills that defy the laws of nature. For some, this ability is gained through years of dedicated practice, often under the watchful eye of a skilled mentor. For others, these powers manifest at a moment of great hardship, as if their willpower alone reshaped the weave in desperation. In either case, there is no denying that a fully realized Weaveknight is a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. So the inspiration here is, it's pretty clearly that kind of like SAO fantasy of just being, I'm going to keep repeating this dumb phrase, so good at sword, it become laser. But I wanted to put in the idea that it could be training, because a lot of fighter subclasses are training-based, but it also could be awoken in a sort of anime protagonist moment of great desperation. Our first feature, as I already described, is called Potent Spirit. Your connection to the weave gives your presence a unique quality that can be felt by those around you. You learn the Thaumaturgy cantrip and gain proficiency with either the Intimidation or Persuasion skill. This is just for flavor. This isn't doing a lot. Arcane Archer, you can learn, I think it's Prestidigitation and Arcana, or Druidcraft and Nature. When you look at what each of the flavor cantrips can do, Thaumaturgy has the most kind of chosen one, special boy, anime protagonist energy. It lets you make your voice loud, change your eye color, throw open an unlocked door. In the same way, I wanted to give you one of the charisma skills that denotes that you are an outsized presence. Perhaps you are a Weaveknight who is very frightening because you're so powerful, or perhaps you're a Weaveknight who is very persuasive because you just seem like a person of great ability and integrity. This then makes way for the gigantic, very difficult to design and balance feature, Weave Techniques. When you choose this archetype at 3rd level, the swing of your weapon can draw forth powerful magics. These special moves, called Weave Techniques, are detailed under Weave Techniques below. You have a number of weave points which you can use to power these techniques. Your fighter level determines the number of points you have, as well as how many techniques you know, as shown in the Weaveknight table below. Once per turn, you can spend 1 or more weave points to activate a weave technique you know. You regain all expended weave points when you finish a short or long rest. To use a technique, you must be wielding a melee weapon, the properties of which may alter the effects of the technique. Different techniques have different activation times, and may increase in power based on the number of weave points expended. Some techniques may impose a saving throw on other creatures. The saving throw DC is calculated as follows: 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength or dexterity modifier, your choice. As you can see, kind of a lot going on in this feature, but I just want to talk about sort of the numbers. Right now, there are a couple examples of things like this. Arcane Archer has very few techniques. I think it has somewhere in the 12 or 13 range, and you learn ultimately about 6 of them. Battlemaster has many more. It's got over 20 at this point, but when it first came out, it only had, I think, 17. And you eventually get to learn 9 of those. So generally speaking, you get to learn about half the techniques that the subclass can know in those cases. Now, Arcane Archer, very famously terrible, 2 uses per short rest. Battlemaster has a growing number of uses, but it starts at 4 and ends at 6. So I kind of split the difference. I had 3 to 6 weave points, which are a lot more functionally like key because you can spend them in multiples. And by the end, 8 techniques, and I think I wrote 16 of them, although I kind of lost track. So again, the same basic balance of learning and uses. Now, I was kind of torn when I was sort of outlining the script if I wanted to actually go through all of the techniques. I think it's going to make the video very long. I think it's likely that a decent amount of these are super broken, perhaps obviously broken to anyone who's watching. So I'm going to save myself the trouble. I am not going to actually read you the text. I am going to give you a summary of what they do, and I'm going to put up some fun visuals to accompany that. So let's go through all of the weave techniques. Abjur's Stance lets you replace an attack with the spinning or manipulation of your weapon into a defensive stance. It adds a bonus to your AC, makes you immune to magic missile, and if you spend additional weave points, it lasts for more turns. Arc Attack is a blade beam. It is a 15-foot cone that deals weapon damage, and for additional points, it becomes bigger and does bonus damage. Arcane Assist is a bonus action. It's essentially Commander Strike, except it lets you help an ally make a cantrip attack. Burst Attack is that classic hit the ground with your weapon and make a big shockwave of damage. Again, it does weapon type damage, and spending more points makes the shockwave bigger and does some bonus damage. Catapulting Impact lets you hit a target with your weapon and then send them flying away. More points, more distance. There's also a rider about treating the movement as fall damage if they hit an object. Conjurer's Arsenal is a bonus action that summons spectral weapons. You can use those weapons to make extra attacks during the attack action, and of course by spending more points you can summon more weapons. Countering Strike is cutting a fireball in half. It's kind of long, but essentially instead of making a saving throw against a spell or effect, you can make an attack roll, and if you succeed, it gives your allies in the same area of effect advantage on their save. Dispelling Strike is basically like a Dispel Magic, lets you replace an attack with a special move. It can dispel some spells automatically depending on how many points you spend, and for those that are higher level, you have to make an attack roll, similar to Countering Strike. Diviner's Focus is a bonus action that enchants your weapon so that when you roll with advantage, it's actually 3d20, choose highest. Enchantress Curse lets you curse someone that you have hit with your weapon. It deals a little bit of psychic damage, and then it subtracts that amount from their next ability check, attack roll, or saving throw. More points increases the damage and increases the penalty. Evoker's Charge is interesting. It turns your weapon into like pure energy, and whenever you make an attack roll, the target also makes a dexterity save. And whether you hit or they fail, the attack hits. I think the basic idea was I want it to be that all you have to do is make contact, and to me a dexterity save represented that really well. Illusionist's Feint lets you summon kind of like a after image when you attack someone. They have to make an intelligence save to determine which image is the actual you, and if they choose wrong, you get advantage. Leyline Attack is the line-shaped blade beam, much like the others. Necromancer's Echo lets you sort of attack once, and then it deals that attack damage again at the beginning of their next turn if they fail a Constitution save. More points, they do it for additional turns. And the last one, Transmuter's Touch, basically just elemental weapon, and if you spend more points, you get it for more turns. And that's all of them. They're kind of a mess. If you're really interested to see them, go to the subclass. It's linked in the description. I think I covered most of the like basic Magic Swordsman fantasy stuff. Cutting a fireball in half, blade beams, illusory duplicates, delayed damage, weapons made of pure energy. But honestly, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, but you didn't get this really obvious one, like, please comment. Because in the future, I hope to get these tested and make some changes and make version 2s, and I would love to have more options than the 16 I have. Now, the next couple features are pretty simple. We'll start with the 7th level feature, Invocation of Iron. By 7th level, you need only grasp a weapon to infuse it with your magic. All attacks you make with a melee weapon are considered magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. We don't need to talk about this one. Frankly, it's been in like half the stuff I've made for this channel, but around 6th or 7th level, lots of people get magical attacks. Works perfectly for this. What more can I say? At 10th level, we have Honed Technique. At 10th level, your techniques can better capitalize on enemy weaknesses. If one of your techniques imposes a saving throw against a creature who you are able to attack with advantage, such as a blinded creature or one that is prone and within 5 feet, the creature has disadvantage on its saving throw to resist or avoid your technique. This one's kind of weird. I knew I wanted to improve the techniques at 10th level, but because they don't use like a die that I can increase, and because they all work so differently, there isn't like a generic bonus I can give them. So this is just an attempt to square up the fact that if you were just using attacks and you're hitting a prone target, you're doing it with advantage. Well, you should also have advantage on your techniques, but your techniques mostly impose saving throws, so the equivalent of you having advantage is them having disadvantage. I'll be honest, this one is dubious. The next feature is Limitless. By 15th level, you can draw on your power even when you should be at your limit. Whenever you use your second wind feature while you have no weave points remaining, you regain 1 weave point. So this, like I said, is a thing in Battlemaster and Arcane Archer. They both can regenerate 1 usage of their thing, but they do it on initiative. But I like the flavor of someone thinking you're down and out, and then you second wind, regain a bunch of HP, and also get 1 weave point back, and you're going to use that to do something, I don't know, super cool. And lastly, we have signature techniques. Starting at 18th level, you attain true mastery over 2 of your techniques. Choose 2 weave techniques that you know to be your signature techniques. When you use either of these techniques, you can spend 1 fewer weave point than you normally would, including using them at their lowest level without spending any weave points. In addition, the restriction of only using 1 technique per turn only applies to the techniques you know that aren't your signature techniques. This is just signature spells. Again, I've said this anytime we talk about high-level features. It's kind of hard to tell what's balanced and unbalanced at 18th level. I mean, at this point, wizards can turn into T-Rexes for an hour a day. So you being able to do a blade beam every turn seems like not a big deal. So I think as a capstone, it's acceptable for a first draft. And that is the Weaveknight. This is certainly the most complex subclass so far in this series. And because of that, I'm not gonna give playtesting notes here. Frankly, there are too many suspicious things about this subclass. I'm worried about how expensive or cheap all of these techniques are. I'm worried about balancing every single technique. I think unlike Battlemaster, which has the benefit of just adding a set amount of damage and usually imposing a single low-level condition, these are really complicated. This would require a lot of playtesting to get right. I also want to say, for anyone who is watching now and perhaps has been watching, I'm pretty sure next week is going to be something different. I've had some ideas bouncing around for videos that are not about 5th edition, that are not subclasses, and I think I'd like to take a break from this to do one of those. So, hopefully you look forward to that. If not, I'll be back with one of these in 2 weeks. As always, if you're interested in this, if you want to test it out, it's available on D&D Beyond right now. You can click the link in the description. If you're feeling like it, like, comment, and subscribe. If you're not, don't. And I will, hopefully, see you in a week. Bye.